When I was younger, I was obsessed with New Year's, and that wasn't because I could go to a party or see my friends. It wasn't even the fact that I could stay up a bit later than I usually could. It was the fact that I could make a New Year's resolution, and I absolutely loved them. And every year I would come up with a different one. Some years I would say that I would go to the gym every single day without fail. Other years I would say that I would give up on chocolate. And every year I'd maybe last 2-3 days, a week at best. These resolutions never stuck around for long. But when I became a bit older and I started to go to church a bit more, I learnt about Lent. But I didn't focus on any of the important stuff about Lent. I focused on that it could be a time where you give up things, a bit like New Year's, but this one only lasted 40 days. So it meant that if I'd given up something earlier in the year, I could have another go at it. And I remember going to my youth leader once and saying, this year I'm going to give up watching TV for Lent, all 40 days. And I remember the look she gave me, and I was like, she doesn't think I'm going to do it. I'm totally going to do it. And I think I lasted a day and a half. A day and a half was a lot longer compared to some of the other sacrifices I tried to make over Lent. I remember one year giving up meat, and it lasted about 3 hours before I had a chicken nugget. So I was never very good at making sacrifices. But I'd missed the key thing with sacrifice, and that is a sacrifice takes sacrifice. Every year I'd want to give up something like social media or meat or chocolate or TV because I knew it was going to be hard and people would be impressed if I actually did it. But I never really did it, and my motivation was totally wrong with all of that. And really, if I think about it, I wasn't ready to make those sacrifices. And I remember speaking to someone once about Lent, and she was about 5 years older than me and had been Christian most of her life. And she said that every year for Lent, she gives up on something that she isn't trusting in God for, which I thought sounded a bit funny. And that year, for 40 days, she gave up on makeup, because she knew that her confidence came from makeup instead of being with God. But it made me think a bit, what if our sacrifices looked more like that? What if we looked at the things in our lives that got in the way of our relationship with God? And what if we handed them over to Him? What if instead of giving up on chocolate and trash TV, we look more deeply into our lives? And think about those areas that we probably need to give over to Him and actually do it. What if our confidence was not in makeup? What if our confidence was in God? What if our assurance was in being a child of God rather than in how many followers we have? What if we trusted in God and not trusted in fake news instead? Sacrifice isn't about giving up on what is easy or giving up what would be beneficial to us. Sacrifice is hard, it is uncomfortable, it's not easy, it is agonizing, it is difficult, it is annoying. But sometimes sacrifice can be life-giving and joyous as well. But God wouldn't ask us to do anything that He wouldn't do Himself. You see, as far back as Adam and Eve, us humans have been sinful, and God has been trying to give us a way out. He took the Israelites out of Egypt. He gave us the 10 Commandments. He even gave us animals and said, look, these will pay the price for you instead. But even then, we were still sinful. So God gave His only Son lovingly to us to be the ultimate sacrifice for our sins. Jesus was the perfect sacrifice, and by Him giving His life, then we were able to be in a relationship with God. In John 15 verse 13, it talks about this sacrifice that Jesus made, and it says, "Greater love has no one than this, that someone would lay down his life for his friends." Jesus gave up the ultimate sacrifice of His life so that we could be in relationship with God, not only in this life, but in the life to come as well. You see, Jesus' sacrifice means that God can stretch out His arm and offer us a relationship with Him without sin getting in the way. But I think sometimes other things get in the way that we may have to sacrifice ourselves. Often we say we don't have the time to invest in a relationship with God. But I think often we come home from school or do our work and we are tempted to scroll through Instagram or play on our Xbox and use our time in that way instead. Often we may not trust that God can help us. We might be feeling things such as anger or hurt or upset, and we don't think that He can either deal with that emotion or help us in our situation, so we choose not to make that sacrifice of giving it over to Him. And other times we feel guilty because we haven't actually spent the time with God, and we think it would just be a bit awkward if we started doing it now. Maybe these are some of the things that you need to sacrifice and give over to God in order to pursue this relationship with Him. Maybe we need to think about the sacrifices that we can make in our lives as well for this relationship with God. Just as Jesus gave up His own life as a living sacrifice to us, maybe there are things that are standing in the way of our relationship with God that we need to hand over to Him. Maybe we need to consider the sacrifices that we can make to trust Him more. Like I said before, sacrifice is not easy. It's hard and uncomfortable and difficult, and it will often make us face feelings that we didn't realize we had, or the ones that we didn't want to show that we had. But maybe these are the exact feelings that we need to sacrifice in order to pursue a deeper relationship with God.